The 1917 revolution in Russia was one of the most significant and critical events of the 20th century, which radically changed the state system and influenced world history. Analyzing the causes of this large-scale socio-political explosion allows us to better understand the mechanisms of revolutionary changes and their consequences. Economic factors. The accumulation of economic problems became one of the main driving forces of the revolution. Russia's industrial development in the late 19th and early 20th centuries was rapid, but it was accompanied by worsening working conditions for workers, rising unemployment, and worsening social inequality. In agriculture, which was the backbone of the country's economy, the archaic system of land use remained, which did not contribute to increased labor productivity. These factors, aggravated by the consequences of participation in World War I, led to a deep economic crisis and shortages of food and essential goods. Social causes. Social discontent in Russia had reached a critical point by 1917. The bulk of the population, the peasants, lived in abject poverty, unable to improve their situation within the existing system. The working class in the cities faced brutal exploitation, low wages, and appalling living conditions. Intellectuals and the middle class opposed autocracy and the lack of political freedoms. These contradictions created fertile ground for the spread of revolutionary ideas. Political factors. The autocratic regime of Tsar Nicholas II proved ineffective and incapable of reforms that could have averted the crisis. Attempts at reform, such as the creation of the State Duma after the 1905-1907 revolution, failed to bring about significant changes in the governance of the country. The Tsarist government continued to rely on repression of political opposition and demonstrations, which only increased public discontent. Russia's participation in World War I was a catalyst for revolutionary sentiment. Huge human losses, military defeats, and economic exhaustion of the country undermined the people's faith in the Tsarist government and contributed to the growth of anti-war sentiments. The war accelerated all the processes leading to social explosion and made the revolution inevitable. The October Revolution of 1917 was the second and decisive stage of the revolutionary process in Russia, which turned the course of the country's history and had a huge impact on world history. After the February Revolution and the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II, power in the country passed to the provisional government, which, however, was unable to solve the country's pressing problems. Continued participation in World War I. Economic crisis, social discontent. At the same time, the influence and authority of the Soviets of workers and soldiers' deputies grew, especially after the return from exile of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks. In April 1917, Lenin presented his April Theses, in which he called for the transfer of power to the Soviets and immediate peace on the fronts. The Bolsheviks, under his leadership, began active propaganda work among workers, soldiers, and peasants, gaining more and more supporters. By October 1917, under the pressure of public discontent and the efforts of the Bolsheviks, the political situation in the country had escalated to the extreme. The Bolsheviks, who had gained a majority in the Petrograd and Moscow Soviets, decided on an armed uprising. On the night of October 25th Old Style, November 7th, New Style 1917, Bolshevik troops under the leadership of Lev Trotsky began to storm key facilities in Petrograd. The provisional government, sitting in the Winter Palace, was overthrown. Power in the country passed to the Soviets on the basis of the Second All-Russian Congress of Soviets of Workers and Soldiers' Deputies. Consequences of the October Revolution. The October Revolution led to profound changes in Russian society. The RSFSR, Russian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic, was proclaimed, later transformed into the USSR. Nationalization of land, industry, and banks began. The Brest Peace with Germany was concluded, by which Russia withdrew from the First World War. The October Revolution was the beginning of the Russian Civil War, which lasted until 1922 and led to huge human and material losses. Thus, the October Revolution was not just a political upheaval. It was a powerful impetus for global changes that affected many aspects of life, not only in Russia, but also beyond its borders. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to the channel to learn more about important historical events.